I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Oh, boy.
Well, I mean, unless you're driving or operating heavy machinery, right? Then please keep them open.
Yeah, definitely keep them open for that.
Oh, but I want you to just imagine walking into a medical dissection theater. You know the environment I'm talking about. It's utterly sterile.
Right. The air is just bone-chillingly cold.
Exactly. And the overhead lights are blindingly bright, and they've got that, like, that faint electrical hum buzzing in the background.
That's the absolute pinnacle of, clinical scientific order.
Totally. But then as you walk closer to this stainless steel table right in the center of the room, you realize that the thing lying there under those harsh lights is it's a creature straight out of your darkest, most irrational nightmares.
Yeah, and that image, that really perfectly captures the central tension we are exploring today.
It really does.
Because you have this completely rational, unforgiving space of a surgical theater, and it's colliding with the completely irrational reality of a literal monster on the table.
And that jarring collision is our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into a really fascinating book by Luigi Pascal Rondanini. It's titled Blood and Bone, The Speculative Physiology of the Vampire.
Such a great title.
Right. And this book, it takes a completely straight-faced, hyperlogical scalpel to fiction's most famous monster. I mean, the author is literally trying to reverse engineer a vampire's biology, organ by organ, muscle by muscle.
Which is just an incredibly ambitious project when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, for 2 centuries, the vampire has easily been the most anatomically detailed monster in all of fiction.
Yeah, we have all these rules.
Exactly. The folklore and literature have given us these highly specific rules about, their fangs, their aversion to sunlight, their diet.
Right.
Yet almost no one has ever treated that body seriously from a rigid biological standpoint.
So if you are listening to this, whether you are like a diehard horror fan, a biology nerd, or just someone who loves it when an inherently absurd premise is taken to a rigorously logical extreme.
Which is the best kind of premise.
It really is. This conversation is basically tailored to your curiosity. We are going to look under the hood of the undead.
But, before we pick up the scalpel and look at the organs themselves, we really need to establish the unprecedented approach the author is taking here.
Yeah, the framing is everything.
Right, because he's looking at monsters we assume we already understand, but from an entirely clinical angle.
Let's unpack the standard approach first so we have some contrast.
Sure.
Usually when we analyze vampires, we are operating strictly in the realm of metaphor, right?
Oh, 100%.
For hundreds of years, the vampire has been treated as a physical, biological animal. It's a stand-in.
Right, it's a literary device.
Yeah, like it's a metaphor for forbidden desire or
Yeah.
a metaphor for the rapid spread of a bloodborne disease or even, a Marxist critique of high society aristocracy feeding on the labor of the working class.
Yeah. In traditional literary analysis, the vampire's body is just this blank canvas for whatever societal anxiety is happening in any given decade. So if there's a plague, the vampire represents infection. If there's a cultural shift in sexual morality, the vampire represents temptation.
Makes sense.
But the physical mechanics of how the creature actually walks, stalks, and physically digests blood, that's totally secondary to what the creature supposedly means.
And Rondanini completely strips away that poetry. He just tosses out the metaphor and says, okay, but seriously, what would we actually find if we cut the ribcage open?
Yeah, the cover of the book itself states this mission so clearly. It calls it a speculative physiology of the undead.
I love that.
It is a straight-faced dissection.
I keep coming back to that phrase, straight-faced, because it really makes me think of like watching a stage magician perform the classic sawing a person in half illusion.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right, because normally the audience gasps, they suspend their disbelief, and they just accept it as magic.
Right, they play along.
But Rondanini is the guy sitting in the front row who refuses to accept magic. Instead, he brings in a team of structural engineers and trauma surgeons to meticulously explain exactly how a human cardiovascular system and spinal column could supposedly survive being bisected by a saw.
That is exactly what he's doing. And by refusing to wink at the audience, by refusing to fall back on, a wizard did it or it's a supernatural curse, the author creates this really unique, almost academic tone.
Yeah.
The book describes itself as natural history for creatures that were never alive.
Natural history for creatures that were never alive. I mean, that is a massive paradox.
It really is.
Because natural history implies Evolution, right? Environmental adaptation, ecosystems.
Yeah, and applying that deeply serious academic framework to something fundamentally made up is what elevates the whole concept.
Right.
When you study natural history, you trace how an organism's cellular biology adapted to its environment over millions of years. And Rondanini treats the vampire with that same absolute respect.
It's a thought experiment played entirely straight.
Exactly. It's forcing the reader to apply the scientific method to folklore.
Which is an incredibly fun exercise, but adopting that clinical investigative mindset immediately introduces a massive biological crisis for the book.
Oh, a huge one.
Because we have to ask, who exactly is lying on this operating table? Pop culture hasn't given us just one type of vampire.
No, and the book doesn't take the easy way out by just looking at one generic, idealized vampire either.
Thank goodness.
Right. The text explicitly tells us that this is a dissection of 15 different literary and cinematic vampires.
15.
15 distinct variations of the myth.
The net he casts is huge. I mean, he goes all the way back to the early 1800s with John Polidori's moonlit Lord Ruthven.
Yep, the classic.
He includes Bram Stoker's classic reflectionless count. He brings in the terrifying plague rat frame of Nosferatu's Orlok.
Which is just gross.
So gross. And then he goes all the way up to the modern era with the crystalline skin of Edward Cullen.
And if you look at that lineup through the lens of taxonomy and biological classification, it is a nightmare.
Wait, okay, I have to push back on this grouping.
Go for it.
Putting the ancient, groaning, plague-ridden Orlok on the exact same dissection table as the glowing, sparkly Edward Cullen. Are they even remotely the same species, biologically speaking, at that point?
Well,
I mean, one looks like a diseased, hairless rodent that sleeps in a dirt-filled wooden box, and the other looks like, an immortal supermodel made of diamonds.
sure.
How can a biologist look at those two entirely different physical forms and say, yes, they share the same family tree?
See, that incredulity you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
That is the exact central puzzle Rondanini sets out to solve.
Really?
Yeah, that extreme physical variation is the gauntlet he throws down for himself. If he just categorized Orlok as one type of magic and Cullen as a different type of magic, he would fail his own premise.
Oh, I see.
The whole challenge of speculative physiology is synthesizing those massive biological differences into one unified theory.
So he has to build an overarching physiological theory that logically accommodates both a grotesque rat-like creature and a glittering, impenetrable immortal.
Exactly.
He has to find the common denominator in their DNA.
And he does. He hypothesizes a foundational biological framework, which is essentially a highly adaptable parasitic retrovirus.
Okay, a retrovirus.
Right. The book theorizes that this ancient viral mutation expresses itself differently depending on the host's environment and the century of infection.
Oh, wow.
So in this framework, Orlok represents the unadapted, raw infection-like, a violent disease state where the body is ravaged and rat-like.
Right, he's patient zero almost.
Yeah, or just a very aggressive strain. But Cullen, on the other hand, represents a perfected symbiotic end stage of that exact same mutation.
Interesting.
It's a stage where the virus has fully integrated with the human DNA to create basically an apex predator.
Man, that forces us to look inward, though, because knowing that Orlok and Cullen share a viral ancestor doesn't explain how they actually survive day to day.
No, it doesn't.
To prove they belong on the same evolutionary tree, you have to open up the chest cavity and look at the engine.
Which brings us to the core of the text. The book rebuilds the impossible biology that fiction never troubled to explain. And it does it organ by organ.
Yeah, fiction never troubled to explain. Horror writers have coasted on that for centuries,
Well, they love coasting on that.
They just write, the vampire drank the blood and got stronger, and they move on.
Yep.
And Rondanini is just standing there with his clipboard asking, okay, but show your work. How does the body process the blood?
And the specific mechanisms the book analyzes to answer that are deeply technical.
I bet.
It explores how a dead body feeds, the cellular mechanics of how it heals bullet wounds in seconds, and it tackles the most famous discrepancy in vampire lore, which is their reaction to sunlight.
Okay, let's start with the feeding, because I have a highly specific mechanical question about this.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's actually inspired by the artwork on the book's cover. So the cover features this stunningly detailed anatomical illustration of a human heart, right?
That's a gorgeous cover.
And there is a single drop of blood dripping from the bottom of it. But if these creatures are essentially undead, what is pumping the blood?
That is the million-dollar question.
Like, does a vampire's heart even beat to digest their food, or does their mutated digestive system just completely bypass normal cardiovascular circulation entirely?
Well, think about it biologically. If a heart doesn't beat, there is no hydrostatic pressure.
Right.
Blood coagulates, it pools, it doesn't circulate. So how do the nutrients from the blood they drink reach their extremities to provide energy for, say, running or fighting?
Exactly.
Rondanini knows he can't just wave away the heart problem. So he theorizes that the vampiric cardiovascular system abandons the heart entirely in favor of an extreme osmotic gradient.
Oh, interesting. So the cells themselves act as like tiny individual magnets for the nutrients, just pulling the blood through the tissue without needing a central pump.
That's a really decent analogy,
Yeah.
but the book actually likens it more to the capillary action found in towering redwood trees.
Redwood trees.
Yeah, think about it. A redwood doesn't have a heart, right? Yet it moves hundreds of gallons of water, hundreds of feet up into the air.
Oh, wow. I never thought of that.
It does this using negative pressure and cellular osmosis. So Rondanini suggests a vampire's cellular tissue mutates to pull blood from the stomach through the body in a similar, highly aggressive capillary action.
Wait, osmosis. But without the hydrostatic pressure of a beating heart, wouldn't it take days for a single drop of blood to reach the brain using capillary action?
That's a fair point.
I mean, a tree takes all day to move that water. Vampires move at lightning speed.
How does a slow process like osmosis fuel high-speed predatory movement?
Because the physical movement of the blood itself isn't what provides the immediate energy.
Oh.
The author explains that the stomach lining undergoes hypermutation. The second the consumed blood hits the gastric tract, the vampire cells instantly break down the hemoglobin into pure ATP.
Adenosine triphosphate. It's the raw energy currency of a cell.
Oh, okay, so they are essentially operating on overdrive anaerobic respiration.
Exactly.
They don't need oxygen from lungs or a heartbeat to combust the energy. They just strip mine the blood for ATP the second it hits their stomach.
You nailed it. And that excess of instant cellular energy also answers the question of how they heal so fast.
Right, because normally healing takes time.
Yeah, in a human, a cut requires a heartbeat to pump platelets to the wound. But in Rondanini's vampire, that massive influx of stolen ATP triggers hypermitosis.
Hypermitosis.
Yeah, the cells around the wound rapidly divide and rebuild the tissue locally, completely bypassing the need for a circulatory response.
Which brings us to the sunlight problem.
Yeah.
This is a massive discrepancy in the lore.
The biggest one.
Right. Why does ultraviolet light utterly violently destroy one type of vampire, turning someone like Orlok or Dracula into actual ash in seconds?
Just poof, gone.
Right. But then it merely inconveniences another, or in Edward Cullen's case, literally makes him sparkle.
So, the author analyzes this by looking at how the retrovirus mutates the body's melanin.
Okay.
In the older, more degraded vampire strains like Orlok, the viral mutation strips away the cell's protective lipid layers. So when they are exposed to the specific electromagnetic wavelength of UV radiation, these unstable cells undergo catastrophic hyperoxidation.
Meaning they literally rust and spontaneously combust at a cellular level.
Exactly. It's instantaneous. But in the Cullen variation, thousands of years of environmental adaptation have forced an evolutionary response to that specific UV vulnerability.
Oh, the virus adapted.
Yes. Cullen's skin has developed a hyperdense crystalline defensive structure. Yeah, the outer epidermis calcifies to reflect UV rays harmlessly away from the vulnerable tissue underneath.
Oh my God.
And to the human eye, that refractive dermal layer just looks like a diamond-like sparkle.
That is brilliant. It takes a plot point that people have mocked for years, sparkling vampires.
Right, it was such a joke.
And he grounds it in optical refraction and evolutionary defense mechanisms.
And treating supernatural anomalies as biological realities requires that level of complex scientific justification.
Totally.
He honors the fiction by taking it far more seriously than the original authors ever did.
And this intense, rigorous scientific analysis of the absurd, it actually extends beyond the text itself.
Yeah.
It is mirrored perfectly by the physical presentation and the visual aesthetic of the book.
Oh, the visual language is deliberate.
Yeah.
And it's totally vital to the experience.
Yeah.
The book is illustrated throughout with original anatomical plates in the tradition of Vesalius and Gray's anatomy.
And for those who might not know, Andreas Vesalius essentially founded modern human anatomy in the 1500s.
Right.
He famously dug up bodies and mapped the human muscular and skeletal systems, completely challenging centuries of assumptions.
He was a pioneer.
And Gray's Anatomy from the 1800s, it remains the gold standard of medical illustration.
Yeah, these are foundational historical texts. Their illustrations are characterized by this intense, unflinching detail.
Like what?
Like cross-sections of muscle fibers, intricate maps of veins and arteries. They are cold, precise, and entirely focused on biological truth.
Right.
So grounding ridiculous supernatural concepts in that highly respected, stoic, visual language makes the straight-faced tone of this book land perfectly.
You can see it right on the cover, honestly. We have this hyper-detailed, clinical medical illustration of a heart.
It's striking.
It is. You can see every aorta, every muscle fiber, every little groove. It looks like it belongs in a Harvard medical textbook.
Yeah.
But it is framed entirely by an ornate Gothic archway decorated with creepy little bats.
That's amazing.
It is literally hard science encased in Gothic romance.
And the publisher, Rondanini Publishing Ltd., they even call this specific release the Architect Method Edition.
See, that title alone, Architect Method Edition, it sounds so authoritative.
It really does.
But what does that actually mean for the reader? Are there literal architectural schematics in the book?
Yes.
No way.
Yeah. The book treats the skeleton as a structural engineering problem.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Think about it. If a vampire drops 50 feet from a castle wall and lands silently on cobblestones without shattering their femurs, what does the bone density need to look like?
Oh, the physics of it.
Exactly. The architect method means there are literal diagrams mapping the kinetic force of a vampire's leap against the tensile strength of their calcified mutated bone structure.
Wow.
It treats the body as a load-bearing machine.
It communicates that the architecture of the undead body is going to be respected as a functional blueprint.
Yes.
Which brings us to the ultimate question, I think. Why go through all this trouble to scientifically map out a creature that doesn't exist? What is the actual value here?
It's a valid question.
Because I think Blood and Bone isn't just a quirky book about vampires. It's a brilliant exercise in applying rigorous logic to total chaos.
I'd agree with that. It satisfies a deeply human urge to categorize things.
Yeah, we love putting things in boxes.
Right. Because the world is messy, fiction is messy, and our fears are incredibly messy. But we want to understand the unexplainable.
We want to put the monster on a brightly lit steel table, pin it down, and just see how the gears turn.
Exactly.
Because if we know how the organs function, if we understand the ATP production and the hypermitosis, the monster isn't just a scary shadow anymore. It becomes a fascinating machine.
And Rondanini has basically built a bridge between the irrational folklore of our ancestors and the scientific literacy of the present day.
That's a great way to put it.
We love the mystery, but our modern brains demand the order of a biological framework.
Well, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, listening to this, with a new idea to ponder that builds off this incredible premise.
Oh, I'm ready.
If Luigi Pascal Rondanini can successfully reverse engineer a working organ-by-organ biology for a vampire, what other monsters hiding in our cultural closet are just waiting for a biological audit?
Oh, that is such a fun thought.
Right. Imagine a speculative physiology of a ghost.
Oh, wow.
How does a strictly incorporeal, transparent entity physically interact with the environment?
That's tough.
I mean, if they don't have mass, how are they bouncing photons